Hi everyone, it's Wednesday, time for Wisdom Wednesday. Hope everyone is doing well. I wanted to share some information today that I learned over the weekend. I was in a conference that was all about cellular health and drilling down specifically to the cell rather than just looking at the body as a whole or a specific organ or a specific system in the body. This is all about drilling down specifically to cellular health and wellness, and approaching chronic issues from a cellular or metabolic standpoint can help chronic issues within the body, because if a cell is ill, it's fairly ubiquitous on how that happens, whether it's in the lung or the heart or the kidney or the brain. If there is inflammation, it can affect all aspects of health. And so drilling down specifically to that can be of great value. So this is kind of a nerdy episode this week because I just found it fascinating. We've always used omega-3 fish oil as an anti-inflammatory, and really this kind of helped me see how specifically it works. And I'll give you an illustration because I have a really good one from just personal use, but just to give you a brief overview of what's happening when there is inflammation in the body. What happens is there are signals that come in called pro-inflammatory type signals that can set up this cascade of inflammation. Now, we've all heard about cytokines, particularly recently with the COVID infection. And whether it's an infection, whether it's an injury, whether it's just chronic inflammation in the body, we still have these signaling type molecules, either in the form of what's called an interleukin or a prostaglandin, or different types of inflammation type cells. We have an inflammatory component and then we have an anti-inflammatory component. And so what happens is that the inflammatory type cells or mediators or signals will call in certain types of white blood cells. Particularly if there's a bacterial infection, we'll call in the neutrophils. If there is a viral infection or fungal infection, perhaps more lymphocytes. But whenever we do a blood count, we look at these types of cells in everyone's system. So we call in these fighters, if you will, in what we call cellular immunity, and they come in and begin to engulf, phagocytize, or eat, if you will, these pathogens, these microorganisms, whether they are bacteria or whether it's just an injury, we need to clean up the area. And then once they've done that and sort of halted what they feel like is the initial aspect of inflammation, then we have anti-inflammatories to kind of help clean that up. But if the system is overwhelmed by chronic issues, these neutrophils or lymphocytes or whatever cell they might be there are too many, and they begin to pour out all this cellular debris from an infection or an injury, and it creates more infection. And so we have anti-inflammatories that will help then signal other type cells to come do the cleanup of the original cells that come to fight. So there's fighters, and then there's the cells that kind of come clean up. And one of the signals, getting back to omega-3 fish oil, one of the signals that tells the body it's time to come do the cleanup are the types of omega-3 acids that are in the body, the EPA and DHA, the econopentanoic acid and the docosahexaenoic acid. These are the components of a general fish oil tablet. And so they signal these cleanup cells, or actually just signal the types of molecules that are signaling molecules, the prostaglandins, the resolvins, these mediators, if you will, that then do the cleanup. So there's pro-inflammatory signals and anti-inflammatory signals, and it's the fish oil that signals these anti-inflammatory signals. So now at my home, we have a very large pecan tree in our backyard. And every single day, we have squirrels that will take a bite of a pecan and just throw the rest of it on the ground. And I have cellular gunk and debris from these pecans, which is basically the inflammation of my yard. So I have these squirrels that eat a part of a pecan and throw it on the ground. So the squirrels are the pro-inflammatory signalers, okay? And then they throw this half-eaten pecan on the ground, and if left alone, it will, with rain or with sunshine, it will begin to sort of melt or deteriorate and cause a lot of just unsightliness in my yard. And every day when I get home, I want to see a clean yard, and so I'm out there either sweeping it up. And so I am sort of that omega-3 coming in and kind of doing the sweeping. But what really works is when my husband comes and gets the Billy Goat sort of lawn vacuum cleaner and really comes and cleans that up. And that's a really big anti-inflammatory to come clean up my yard and all that cellular detritus, if you will. So that just gives you kind of an idea. There's a pro-inflammatory aspect, which are those dadgum squirrels. And if anybody's got an idea of how to get rid of all this, I would love to hear it. Then you have just the aspect of the injury itself, which is all the junk down on my yard. And then we have the anti-inflammatory, which is either me sweeping or my husband getting the Billy Goat and vacuuming it all up. So it just gives you just kind of a little bit of a word picture of what is pro-inflammatory and anti-inflammatory within the body. But just to reiterate what it is that signals a lot of this and what helps keep the anti-inflammatory aspect, or one of the areas that helps anti-inflammatory. We know there's a lot of them, but this is one of the reasons why fish oil is so important. And particularly people who are at great risk for heart disease and kidney disease, or people who have autoimmune disorders, particularly things like rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, even ulcerative colitis, and some of the GI inflammatory issues. Omega-3 fish oil is a very great signaler for health, and one of them particularly as a protector for brain is the DHA, because it can cross into the blood-brain barrier and really help protect the brain when there's a lot of inflammation. We know we see a lot of that with older folks who are dealing with the lipopolysaccharides and the inflammatory component with particularly urinary tract infections. So omega-3 can be really helpful. And I know those are large pills and they're hard to swallow. We have some smaller ones here. I have a Omega Pure here with even some curcumin, and curcumin is another anti-inflammatory, and it's not a really big pill, so a lot smaller than some of the fish oil. And I know a lot of people have trouble with fish oil because they burp it up. I tell people put that in your freezer and take them even frozen, and usually it bypasses the stomach and can and kind of melts further down the track and is less of a problem from that perspective. But I do think that fish oil can be exceedingly helpful, and it's that EPA DHA in particular. I know a lot of folks want to take flaxseed to get their omega-3s, and the problem with that is you just don't, it's a big sinkhole for the body to make the EPA and DHA. So just wanted to touch base on that. I know this is kind of nerdy science, but I hope that perhaps it's given you a little bit of an insight into the body and why this is such an important supplement. You all go on and have a great day, and we will talk again next week.